Welcome to Global Village Show. My name is Ahmed Kassim. I'm the host of your program. Today we have two great guests, Ron Robinson, Director of Management Emergency for the City of Medicine Hat, and also Teresa Denino. She is the Superintendent in school in Medicine Hat. Welcome to the program, both of you.
You're welcome.
Pleasure.
Ron, could you please tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Married 39 years to my best friend Susan, two wonderful children, 4 grandchildren. Former fire chief, almost 35 years in the fire industry, and just retired as of October 9th of 2012. We moved to Medicine Hat from Saskatoon in 1976 and fell in love with the city of Medicine Hat. And of course, one of my passions is public safety. So naturally, I find myself in the wonderful role of giving back to the community through Director of Emergency Management for the City of Medicine Hat and Southeast Region province of Alberta.
And you also are the chairperson of the province?
I was the technical fire chair for the Safety Codes Council for the province of Alberta. And as an investigator and inspector, part of the role was to try and develop code cycles that would best benefit residents and the safety of residents through that link and that knowledge of fire prevention and fire prevention programs.
Wow, that is. Thank you very much. What about Teresa?
I came into the area in 1979. Began my full-time teaching career in September 1980. Taught in General Alberta for a couple of years, and then in Ralston for a number of more years until I resigned to develop the school in which I am now superintendent. The school is CAPE, Center for Academic and Personal Excellence. It is a public charter school.
Oh, okay.
I have 4 children. My husband and I came into Alberta because we both priced ourselves out of the job market after getting married and before coming here. We found this magnificent community in which to raise children, and we are both committed to supporting the community, I in education and he in health.
Wow, that's good. So you're moving from other provinces?
We moved from Quebec into Ontario and then into Alberta.
Wow, 2 large provinces.
Quite different.
Very much.
Yeah, we're both immigrants, so our children are first-generation Canadians.
Oh, wow. Okay, so you must be from Italy then.
We are both from Italy.
There you go.
He immigrated at the age of 4, and I immigrated just before my 13th birthday.
Wow. Italy is a great country. Yeah, one of the great country in Europe. Could you tell us a little bit, Ron, about when the agency was formed and reasons behind why it was formed?
In the early 70s, it was decided that under the Disaster Services Act, there was a need for an agency that would look after the needs of the residents during any disaster or any incident of scale. In the 70s and 80s, there were plans that were developed, and it was in the early 90s that under the leadership of the City of Medicine Hat City Police, it was made a decision to develop a regionalized model for disaster services. And in 1995, the first regional emergency management plan was signed by all 3 municipalities.
Wow, and you coordinate all the other agencies then?
So at that time, it was determined that the need for regional collaboration would both be beneficial under a program that the province of Alberta had in place. So there was the impetus to actually develop the regionalized model was funded through the province. So naturally, the memorandum of agreement was designed to, allocate thresholds whereby an activation of an emergency operations center would occur who the respective authorities in each municipality would be, so that the autonomy existed with each of the municipalities to activate their own respective plans.
Wow. So it's been for a long time then, since 1970s.
Indeed. Now, of course, under the Disaster Services Act at that time, there were a number of ambiguities that existed in terms of authority. What is a state of local emergency? What is a state of emergency? How do you recover in the event of a disaster within your communities? Now, the City of Medicine Hat and region have experienced a number of incidents. We've had 4 1-in-100-year events since 1995. 1995, 2002, 2005, actually 2010 and 11, we had a flash flood. We've experienced a pandemic in 2009, each of which required a serious amount of collaboration between Sudbury County and the town of Redcliffe to come together and to really coordinate resources to mitigate and the impact of these disasters on our community.
Wow. Teresa, coming to this area of Alberta, coming from Ontario and Quebec, what challenges you faced when you came to this cowboy land? Very different from the East, which is very much multicultural for a long time.
I think the biggest issue for me was the vastness of the environment. For several years, I couldn't look up without getting dizzy. It was just amazing to find myself in an environment where you could look as far as your eye could go. And it was just fantastic. Coming from large cities in the East where you look up and you see a little patch of dirty sky, and you're on top of each other, to be able to not close your blinds at night and to be able to walk out on the prairie and take a walk. And the wildlife was amazing. I was told when I originally came that the prairie was empty. I soon discovered that it was far from empty. You know, all the flora and the fauna and the life that was in there was just amazing. And the next thing that I found incredibly gratifying, incredibly supportive, was my first teaching assignment in Jenner. The response of the community to my work with the students was just amazing. The support, the encouragement was just nothing short of incredible. And I found myself a part of a community that was so close-knit, in which the parents and the students and the staff were a team in all aspects of those children's education and lives. Even though they were spread on farms everywhere, the school was a focal point, and everybody came together. The potluck suppers and the feasts and the special events, I was included wholeheartedly, and so was my family, and that was just beyond belief.
That's good to hear. That is very much that's the Medicine Hat spirit, I guess. And it's
and some of them still keep in touch. Past students of mine, they now are adults, middle-aged with children, and they still keep in touch. Just last week, I walk out of the school and there's this man calling my name, crossing the street. I looked at him and I said, "Dennis, is that you?" "Yes, Mrs. D. I came to pick up my daughter." And he was one of my students in the first years at Ralston.
Wow, wow, amazing.
Yeah.
That is amazing. Education is extremely very important for the youth, the leaders of tomorrow. As you very much know that both federal and provincial governments are trying to cut budget one way or the other to balance their books. Would that was some sort of effect, especially for the education in this area, and what the community can do to help out?
It is certainly going to affect the jurisdictions across the province, some more than others. The the two components I think that are going to be felt most by the students is the lack of funding for the AC program, which is Alberta Initiative for School Improvement. That's the environment within which school jurisdictions engage in action research to try and support the student bodies and to develop new methodologies of teaching that best suit groups of students, and explorations take place within that setting. That's going to be felt. The lack of increase, for example, in the student grant, that's also going to be felt. However, having said that, people are resilient and communities are supportive. I think one way or the other, jurisdictions are going to make the best possible decisions they can to support their students and their programs. And so, in spite of it all, I think the schools are going to do the best job they possibly can with the students. Obviously, it would have been nice to have the financial supports built into, the budget, but things are the way they are. We do the best we can.
Yeah, but also we have to be realistic that if we need the next generation to live a free debt of the other generation, we have to sacrifice so they won't have to pay the problems of the generations today for the generations of next. So we have to also do some sacrifice to add up and clear the books for them when they take the helm. Same thing with RON. Would that be effect on the federal and provincial funding in terms of this kind of emergency disaster prevention?
So on a number of fronts, the Joint Emergency Preparedness Program has been axed by the federal government in an effort to try and streamline the amount of funds that are provided for emergency services and emergency management in general. CBRN initiative, which is chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear, explosive education and training opportunities, has seen a slight increase in federal funding. That being said, the provincial government has made it clear that where silos exist, there would be duplication of efforts and resources. And so Doug Griffiths, Alberta Municipal Affairs Minister, has made it clear that where regional collaboration can come together in certain areas of the province to benefit the residents so that we don't duplicate resources, that we effectively and cost-effectively run our respective business units so that we can use more creative means in which we come to the response and needs of the community through 4 pillars of emergency management. And those 4 pillars include preparedness strategies / mitigation strategies, because there's a 25-to-1 return on investment there. So for every dollar we spend on developing preparedness and mitigation strategies, or prevention and mitigation strategies, there's a $25 return.
Wow.
And those dollars are identified both by the federal government and provincial governments. So it behooves us as an emergency management agency to work collaboratively. So there are regional collaboration program grants that are available, which the City of Medicine Hat, Town of Redcliffe and Cypress County did a joint application and were successful. So despite the fact that there are less funds available overall, where collaboration exists, the government is going to support those kinds of initiatives because the benefit is obvious for residents and for taxpayers alike.
Wow, that is true. That is true indeed. Teresa, a lot of today's immigrants are not from the Anglophone side, obviously. Things are changing due to the labor shortage. Some time back, we used to have immigrants coming from UK, from English-speaking nations. Today you have other nations who English is second language, and that is very much affecting the schools as well. would the communication side of the youth at school is a challenge, especially, and is there any support from the government in terms of the language?
If you don't mind, I'm going to back up a little bit. When I came into the country, and I'm not going to say which year because it's going to date me,
Yeah.
there were no supports.
Mm-hmm.
Immigrants came in, the students were assessed in terms of past educational experience. Just a quick look at the number of years in school, and they were placed usually 1 or 2 years below that. I was to go into a grade 8, and I ended up into a grade 6. And basically what happened is you sat in the class until you learned, and then you integrated. Things have changed tremendously since then, for the better. We do have second language programs in all of the schools, to some degree or other. As a matter of fact, there is even a charter school dedicated to English as a second language. They have become leaders in this aspect of education across the country. We have second language students at Cape. We have a very multicultural community with young people from all over the world, for most of whom English is indeed a second language, and some of whose parents are not English speakers. So yes, it is a challenge, but we have the tools, and we have the financial supports, and we have the skills within the teaching profession to support those students and their families in the acquisition of the language and the culture.
Yeah, but the point, the other point is, for example, your kids, they are first generation in Canada from immigrant family. When they grow up, would they be speaking Italian or English?
Oh, my husband and I made a decision, a conscious decision, to make sure that they were very fluent and very competent English speakers first, and then they could learn other languages if they so wished. Myself, I am trilingual. My husband is trilingual. We are great believers in multi-languages and in the benefits it brings to the individuals and the communities. So students that come into the province or the country at this point are going to be multi-language speakers, and that is beneficial.
That's true. Because the reason that I was making that point is I personally advocate the immigrants, their first generation kids in Canada. Let them speak the language. They're not going to forget the mother language, because the more you emphasize your mother language, whether it's Italian, Arabic, or other language, then the kids will not have advantage at the school. So the kid who was born here will go to ESL. So that will take that kid behind the other kids who were born here, same as the kid who was born here. So that is a difficult, some of the parents that, you know what, if I let my kids speak English when they growing, my culture, my language will fade away. No, it's not going to fade away. So I was trying to explain group of people, and one of the persons says, you know what, I think I am sensing you are anti-immigrant. I'm just looking at it and I'm saying, you must be a color-blinded. I am not anti-immigrant, I'm just telling you the truth. Let's give the kid the chance like any other kid. They were born here, their first language must be either English, if they were born in other province like Quebec, French. Their language, their mother language, which any other language other than English, they will learn, they will not forget, trust me. And as a teacher, as a superintendent, I really appreciate the comment that you made, that it's always good to make that conscious decision for the kid to be given when they're a kid to speak the language that they were born into. And that's one of the problems that we have, is then you will have a kid going to ESL, that's again taxpayers' money, which that money can be allocated for benefit for other programs with beneficial to the community.
That is indeed a very valid approach. And I've seen in my years in education and within immigrant communities, I've seen both approaches. I've seen the one that says my child will go out into the community and be speaking the language within the community, so English, and go to English schools and be fluent in that, and come home and speak the English language, which is what we have done. But I've also seen my peers who went to English schools, socialized with Francophones, and went home and spoke the Italian at home with their families and their families' friends and their neighbors, and have developed into polyglots. I do see some issues with that in terms of the fluency and the acquisition of the full language, because the language tend to bleed into each other. And it still happens to me after God knows how many years trying to learn English, where I cannot find a particular term I'm looking for in English, and I will revert to my Italian or my French. But I do strongly believe in the benefits that the polyglot approach brings. That was my one salvation when trying to learn English, is that I did have the other languages behind me, and I could go back to the roots of the words and figure out the meaning that way. I spent several years learning Latin, and so I had the basics of all the Romance languages, which were hugely beneficial to my learning English. English is not exactly the easiest language to learn. I'm still trying after a lot of years.
That's true.
So it's a parental decision.
Yeah.
I think there are pros and cons to each.
Yeah.
But in the end, I think what works best for the child.
Yeah.
So if the child can integrate into a social group that is English speaking, move into a preschool environment, obviously English speaking in Alberta, and move into school in Alberta and acquire strong language skills, that's fine, and retain the culture and retain the language of their native country of origin.
Well, I'm glad our viewers will hear from the expert, because that is the common logic way that I see, and every family have the right to do whatever was good for their kids, and we should give the kid the tools that they can succeed in life. We can't just have the kid tie their hand back and then expect they will succeed. How the communication, you think, affects your emergency?
Well, Ahmed, that is actually one of the critical questions that we ask ourselves in emergency management. As Teresa identifies, that we are in an ever-increasing multicultural community. Acknowledge the fact that given an event of scale or disaster, it's incumbent upon emergency management to have in place programs that will be able to communicate various languages and communicate through cultural uniquenesses. So we are in the process through the Regional Collaboration Program grant to develop 3 independent municipal emergency management plans. And in those plans, it is our strategy to develop language-based emergency management plans that will be available to various ethnicities. We anticipate roughly 8 languages that this will be translated into and available. Now that's going to be a process. It's not going to happen overnight. But the critical mass is to be able to communicate with people who don't necessarily know the English language and are struggling with understanding what does it mean to be in a situation that requires people to be prepared to look after themselves for 72 hours. We call that yo-yo 72, you're on your own for 72 hours. Because as emergency management allocates resources specific to the incident or multiple sites, we won't have enough resources available to look after all of the residents' needs.
No, thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Ron. I think you will be able to find a great people like Teresa or other people who from the community of medicine will be able to help out the language side. I do speak 9 languages, and it's obviously good when you have the the gift of speaking different languages other than English, American, Australian, which comes all to one language. I always joke with the people that they speak different languages.
Well, that would be something that included in our strategy is to come to ESL classes and to identify and to listen to what their needs are specifically. And emergency management plays a large role in the development of plans. If you're not prepared, if you don't have a plan in place, you're not going to be able to activate in a moment. You're not going to have your preparedness or go kits that has all of those essential ingredients for life to move to a location where it's actually safe to do so. So that will be part and parcel of what emergency management brings to the table in the City of Medicine Hat and in the Southeast region as well.
Well, we are very lucky to have you, both of you, on the program. And that's a great job, great service for the community of Medicine Hat and southeast of Alberta. And we hope you will succeed as you did your 32, 35 years in public service. And we hope to see you next time around to our program, same as Teresa. And thank you very much for taking the time coming to Global Village.
You're welcome.
Pleasure.
Thank you very much. This was the end of the program. This is your host, Ahmed Kassim, Global Village, and we hope you will join us next time, same time, and you will find the world to your doorstep from different cultures, from different language, from different area. Thank you very much, and have a great day.